Can I ask you to do the housekeeping, please, Mark?
Sorry, Chair?
Can I ask you to do the housekeeping, please?
Yeah, bear with me, Chair. I'll have to get the script out. Sorry, I thought it was...
Yes, sorry. I thought I had it to hand, but it doesn't appear to be here.
With me, Chair. I'll just get it now.
If I find it first, I'll do it, but I can't. It's not where I thought it was.
Sorry, Chair. Did you say something?
Yeah, I found it. If you'd rather me do it.
Yeah, sorry, Chair.
Yeah, may I remind everyone present, this meeting is being live streamed as well as recorded via the internet, and this recording archived for future viewing. Could all participants mute themselves when not speaking in order to avoid any background noise or feedback when other participants are speaking? If a committee member wishes to speak, they can they please put their hand up if they can be seen, or to use the raise hand function. If a committee member raises their hand via the function and is not subsequently invited to speak by the chair, please could they turn the camera on to indicate or place a message in the chat function. When invited to address by the chair, please could all participants ensure that their microphone and camera is on to ensure they can be seen, both seen and heard when actively participating. If this is not possible for any reason, please bring this to the attention of myself and/or Democratic Services Officer as soon as possible. If required, participants can dial into the meeting using the telephone. If for any technical reason any person party to the proceedings is unable to hear, then the hearing will be adjourned for a short time to allow contact to be made. It's important to remember that all parties must hear all the proceedings unless they themselves decide to leave. And please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function. For the sake of the recording, the chat function may be used to highlight any technical issues and/or grab the attention of the chair or Democratic Services Officer only. Right, welcome all to the Planning Committee meeting Thursday, the 30th of November 2023 at 4 p.m. I'm sure that we're all that most people are in. So starting with the agenda, before we start the agenda, can I draw to the attention of committee members that we do have a late rep on, or a matter arising, whichever you want to call it, which came through earlier. Hopefully you've all had a chance to look at that. So agenda item 1, apologies for absence.
I've not had any through for the main meeting, Chair, but I don't know if obviously members have any to forward.
No, I see no hands, so I'm assuming that's all okay. Agenda item 2, the minutes of the meeting held on the 26th of October. Oh, Councillor Champion, you had your hand up.
No, sorry, I'm going a bit early.
Okay, then minutes of the meeting on the 26th of October. Can I agree that this was a true record?
Agreed.
Yeah. Yep, Sandra's moved, Charles has seconded. I see no other hands, so that's fine. Declarations of interest and the nature of such interest, please. Councillor Champion.
Yes, on item 8.1, enforcement, I've had a couple of meetings, I think, with Tim Vaughan, the owner of Pantworking Stables. I've also had meetings with complainants who are neighbours, and I've had correspondence, but obviously I'll take this with fresh eyes and I have my own views. Thank you.
Okay. And Councillor Bruce, you have your hand up.
Yes, declaration of interest on 8 as well. My family has links with the equine side of Tim Vaughan. Nothing else. Don't know anything about anything else.
Right. Are you declaring a
Not
family?
sorry, it's
family
non-prejudicial, and yes, it's family. So, but I'm non-prejudicial, looking at it with fresh eyes.
I perhaps want to take advice on that. Is it a family member that is involved with the stables? Is you're saying?
Yes.
That might make it prejudicial. Can I get advice on that, please? James on?
Yeah.
Sorry, Chair. Ultimately it's for Councillor Bruce's side if her interest is prejudicial, and without knowing the specific nature of the involvement of what family member and in what context, it's difficult to provide advice.
My son has, and my grandson have shares in Tim Vaughan's horses. One of them. Has been several, but it's only one now.
I think you should consider that position then, Councillor Bruce, and perhaps withdraw from the meeting for that item, as it's
there's no equine involved in it.
James?
Well, obviously the enforcement action relates to the holding of Mr. Vaughan, and it may be sensible to declare on that, just because there's a financial aspect to it. Whilst it's not directly linked, I think from a sort of general view, it may be sensible on that basis.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the rule of thumb is, if in doubt, step out. So yeah, I think that's probably wise advice. So moving on there, if there are no other declarations of interest, reports to the head of sustainable development, agenda item 4, building regs, applications and other building control matters determined by the head of sustainable. These are for noting. Could someone move them second, please? Thank you, Charles. Thank you, Eddie. Item 5, planning applications determined by the head of sustainable development under delegated powers. Again, for noting. And again, could I ask someone to move a second? Let's see, yeah, Sandra and Eddie. Item 6, appeals. Now I think that's who's taking us through the appeals?
Yes, Chair. I'll take you through. I've got a presentation, so just give me a second to load that up. Members see that?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, great.
Yeah.
So as usual, there's obviously the report of appeals received and decisions made as well. So you can see there's 5 new planning appeals received. Those are going to be dealt with under the written representation route. There's also an enforcement appeal there on that's come in, again, written reps. As for decisions, so the report there, we've got 3 decisions in recently, all 3 being dismissed. So going with officers on the decisions made. In terms of our stats, it's quite comforting that 16 decisions made since April this year, 14 of them have been dismissed. So that's about 87% dismissed there since April. So that's good, I think, and it shows PED who have gone with the decisions that we've made effectively. So yeah, I've got the 3 decisions that are on the agenda there. As you can see, there's a synopsis of the key issues there, but I just thought, again, I'd just share the key issues of each one. So this was a property at Bradford Place in Penarth, originally an application to propose a new driveway at the front of the property. You can see there it would have involved an incursion into the existing stone wall. So you can see the stone wall there at the frontage, just behind that parked car. involved cutting into this land here. So removing basically a section of historic stone wall and pier, as well as the harm from a hard surface effectively. So the site falls within the conservation area Penarth. So that was a key component in deciding the application effectively. In terms of the decision, so the inspector notes the verdant qualities of the appeal property's front garden, the continuity of that boundary wall there at the front, talking about that contributing to the distinctive character of the street scene. So what they said is that the widening of the existing pedestrian access, which is a typical street scene feature to create the vehicle access, would result in the removal of the original front wall and pier and form an important part of the historic fabric of the building's frontage. And the hard surfacing as well as the likely earthworks would then erode that verdant character of the garden. So they concluded that it does cause significant harm and dismissed the appeal on that basis. So that's the first one then in your agenda. The next one then, bit of a complex application, and it's quite a lengthy decision. So you can see quite a lot of discussion there in terms of the merits of the application. So there was 2 planning appeals, one a full application and one for conservation area consent. So land at Bolston House in Bonvilston. So I don't know if you know the site, but you've got the Red Lion public house around just where my cursor is there. And you can see just on the edge of the site. So it's set in the conservation area behind another stone wall in this instance, quite a prominent wall along the frontage, and it's identified as a positive feature in the conservation area appraisal. So what this scheme proposed was redevelopment of the site, demolition of Bolston House, and erection of 14 dwellings. It wasn't a decision as such made by the council to refuse planning permission, but it was non-determination appeal. So in that instance, the appellant submitted an appeal, the council hadn't made a decision, and then obviously at that time, the decision making gets taken out of the hands of the council to be made by PEDU. So a stance report was produced back in September 2022, so it would have come to this committee. So you would have resolved at that time to refuse planning permission, and there were a number of key issues. So there was impact upon conservation area, that loss of stone wall. There's not making effective use of the land in terms of density, potential noise impact to residents, particularly from the close proximity to the public house, highway safety concerns, and then there was also inadequate mitigation for the loss of trees and ecological information. So there's a lack of information with the application. So again, inspector has gone through those issues, set out that there is limited harm in terms of impact on the character and appearance of the conservation area, losing a section of that wall there, just by this access here. So this wall was going to be taken down. So in effect, it said that was harmful to the conservation area. In terms of the density argument, the inspector noted that there was a density proposal of 17.5 dwellings per hectare. Now, our policy seeks to get 25 dwellings per hectare. They said that policy MD6 sort of suggests that there can be lower densities in prescribed instances in terms of when you take into account constraints of a site. So on this issue, the inspector looked at the access and visibility displays, TPO trees, the proximity to houses, things like sustainable drainage, and felt that on balance it was an acceptable density. And then in terms of highway impacts, so the inspector said that the scheme struck a balance between a safe means of access whilst respecting the character of the area. So they were satisfied with the highway impact and that they could deal with that through appropriate conditions. In terms of living conditions, I mentioned there the relationship to the public house. So the inspector wasn't too concerned with that, and they felt that a condition could require noise mitigation for properties there. So those are the key issues. There was the other issue of viability as well, so noted during the application process. In this case, the development would fail to deliver any affordable housing or financial contributions. The council obviously considered whether there were other reasons which would outweigh this to justify the development. So there was some weight go into market housing, but this scheme was proposing no contribution to affordable housing, and the inspector did note that in the decision, and wasn't satisfied with the reasons given why this particular site was experiencing viability issues, and suggested that the applicant had looked at exploring things like alternative designs, layouts, and even timing development to make it what they say in the decision letter to be a socially responsible one. So yeah, it was an interesting decision in that respect. On biodiversity matters, the inspector concluded the proposal would result in a loss of trees and inadequate detail there. So summing up, it came to the conclusion it wasn't acceptable, and dismissed the appeal. So good decision, quite a lengthy one to read. And then on the conservation area consent, so went the same way then in dismissing that on the basis that there wasn't a scheme to implement in terms of the loss of some of that stone wall there. So that was that one. And then the other decision then is an enforcement appeal decision, so relating to an enforcement notice. So members will be aware of this, at 101 Port Road West in Barry. So the key issues there, obviously the council served an enforcement notice in connection with the roofing material and the boundary wall, which is 1.8 metre high. So the key issues for the inspector were firstly to consider whether there was a breach of planning control, because that was one of the grounds appealed by the appellant. And then secondly, if there was a breach of planning control, is the development acceptable? So looking at it from a character impact in terms of the street scene and wider context. So in terms of that first argument, the inspector noted that works can be permitted development, but obviously this is on the basis of alterations to roofs effectively matching as far as practicable the materials used in the equivalent element of the dwelling house. So was the argument was put there that the whole roof was changed, so how could it match the existing? The inspector felt that it is quite clear in terms of the material should match the existing, so at the time of taking it off, the existing material that was there. So yes, they did agree that it needed planning permission. There was another argument put in about the drawings not showing the proposed roofing materials. I think the proposed drawing showed the words existing materials. The inspector noted that, but said it was quite clear from condition 2 of the permission, and the drawing in fact showed that it would match the finish of the existing dwelling. So on the ground of appeal, that if permission should be granted, the inspector noted there was a clear contrast. So you can see it there on the photograph, really, the contrast between the roofing material to the concrete finish of the remainder of properties along the street scene. So didn't feel that it fitted in with that character. And similarly for the boundary wall, also felt that contrasted with the open plan nature of some of the other properties there. So the final issue, so the inspector obviously dismissed those grounds of appeal. The final issue then was to consider the time to comply with the notice. So they effectively, this was specified as being 6 months, but the inspector agreed to allow 9 months to comply with the notice. So a decision was made. So this appeal decision was made on the 2nd of November. So it gives 9 months then from that decision to carry out the works. So yeah, that's it for the appeals.
Thank you very much. Are there any queries or anything like that, or comments on any of that? I see no hands, so I assume that that's accepted and noted.
Okay, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We move then on to trees, which is our next one on our list. And these are again for noting. Can I have someone?
Noted.
Thank
Chair.
you. That's I'll second that. And then we move then back to the Liam show and enforcement, please.
Yes,
Liam.
yes, Chair. Yeah, I'll take you through this report.
Before you do, can I just explain? Sarah Fice would normally take this, but she's unwell, and so Liam's deputising.
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, so this is one of two reports on your agenda, seeking authorization to take enforcement action. So quite a detailed report there in terms of land and buildings at Pant Wilkin Stables. Enforcement actions being sought. Sorry, Councillor Champions. But
yeah.
Are we
Has
discussing Pant Wilkins?
Yeah, I was just about to say, as Councillor Bruce, I think, has stepped out.
I'll just double check. Has she?
She's not on my list anymore, so I'm assuming she has.
Okay, we'll call her back in when we're done with the item, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I'll move on. Yeah, so enforcement action has been sought in relation to a number of breaches of planning control at the site, carried out both on land and in buildings. Some of them relate to operational development works, and then some are material change of uses of the land. So in both those instances, the key issue is whether the unauthorised development is acceptable in this rural location, or does it have an adverse impact on the surrounding landscape or neighbouring property? So thinking about your local development plan, does the development offend that local development plan? So in terms of Pant Wilkin Stables and where it is, so it's a large commercial horse racing enterprise located northeast of Cowbridge and north of the A48. So just get my cursor on there. So you've got the A48 running through here, and Cowbridge in the west, Aberthin up here. Pant Wilkin Stables is in this area, although the original complex was approved in this area, but there was a permission to re-site some of the horse racing buildings up to this point up here. In terms of access, access is, as you can see on this plan, really sort of shows it easier around like that. So this is the site we're talking about. The main areas is around where I'm circling there. So permission was granted in 2016 for that reorganisation of stabling, involved the construction of new stable buildings to the north of the yard, which are up here. So the council has approved a number of subsequent applications for development associated with the equestrian use. So some of the buildings have on the former yard area have been allowed to be used for equine clinic and dog grooming. So we've received some complaints relating to some of the consents and other activities on the land as well. So we've been investigating for a number of months, revisiting the site, responding to complaints received. So this effectively is a sort of appraisal of the whole area and looking at what breaches are on site and what actions are needed effectively. So further we've had applications which we've refused as well recently for change of use of buildings on the site, as well as an event car park which we refused. So that again has prompted further investigations in terms of what is being carried out and what needs to be actioned in terms of enforcement action. So I'll move on to the next slide. So you'll see in the report there are different items headed up in terms of where we are seeking to take enforcement action. So the first is in use of the former equestrian buildings on the site for business uses. So we had a complaint about Fredwell's Cafe, and there were other commercial businesses there established in the former equestrian building. So you can see the general makeup of what was then existing previously of these buildings. So you've got the dog grooming parlour, you've got the equine uses, but the rest of the building should in terms of their lawful planning purpose be used for stabling, and there are no other permissions granted beyond what I've just mentioned in terms of those other uses. So we've recently refused an application 2022-01222 to retain the number of uses on the site. We consider they weren't appropriate uses in this location. Particularly there was a cafe use, a sofa warehouse, a bakery, offices. So there wasn't an evidence need why these particular uses need to take place at this site. They're the type of uses you'd expect in your settlements and on sort of established business industrial areas. So we've obviously established that the business uses extend beyond the area applied for as well. So when we dealt with the application, there are changing uses effectively in the building. So There was also first floor windows put in without planning permission. So those photos just give a flavour of the different types of uses. So we have the cafe use, which I understand has now ceased. You have the sofa area, like a children's play area, bakery. So there's various uses that have been operating there without planning permission. So effectively our recommendation is to require the unauthorised uses to cease, and the removal then of the first floor windows and any fixtures and fittings associated with them. We have we've met with the owner of the land and his planning agent, so we discussed the issue at length. We understand they are proposing to come in with a new application, looking at new uses to put to the buildings, but we feel we should effectively take enforcement action for the unacceptable uses on the land. So that's what we're seeking authorization today to do. As I mentioned, they have written a letter in which came in today and said that they will be submitting an application, but we don't feel that we should not take action because of that. I think we should just proceed with the issue at hand, and then obviously if an application comes in and you know we can deal with that on its own merit then effectively. So that's the first item. The second one,
before we get on,
Yeah.
move on to the second one,
Yeah.
I want to see if there's any discussion, debate, any queries about what you've been telling us. I mean, there are a number of recommendations that we need to agree on page 82, bottom of page 82 through to top of page 84, with the reasons for the recommendations continuing on page 84. I'm hoping everybody's read that, and I see no hands up, no comments. Can I take it then that the enforcement action is agreed by assent? Nobody's disputing that, so that's agreed.
okay, thank
by
you, Chair.
assent.
So should we do that for the remainder of them? Because obviously I've got a few different slides for the other uses, well, the other breaches then on the site. So
Well, I think
do you want to do
we-
them separately, or do you want to do it at the end?
I think that unless any member of the committee would like to correct me, I think we've agreed to the recommendations en bloc on that. So all recommendation 1, had legal services be authorised to issue the following enforcement notice under section 172: use of former equestrian buildings for business uses, with 3 clauses. Use of holiday log cabins for general rental purposes, with 2 clauses.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just got a few more slides to show those issues effectively. So
Okay.
like for example,
Oh,
the
sorry.
holiday cabin.
Sorry. I thought you were moving on to the
No.
to the next one.
Oh,
Sorry. I apologise. It's my fault.
that's okay. Yeah, I'll move on then, and we can obviously take it then
Yeah,
at
yeah.
the end. Yeah, so the second aspect in terms of breaches, so we've looked at the uses on the site. The other aspect then was holiday log cabins. So an application was approved in 2019 for 6 holiday cabins at the site. So the area we were just talking about is this area here. Well, they've got holiday cabins alongside. That was on the condition, and the condition that we've pasted on there, that those little cabins are used for holiday accommodation only. So we've been advised through investigation effectively that some of the cabins have been occupied by people who are not on holiday. So they're let out on sort of short-term and longer-term basis. But not only that, one tenant has been permanently occupying one of the units since August 2020. So there's a clear breach of planning control there in terms of breach of that condition. The landowner has agreed to remove the tenant and then amend the booking platform. So the booking platform they use to alert customers to the fact it's not for business use, or it's not for permanent accommodation. So unless we take enforcement action to require compliance, effectively, the claim could be made that the use of one of those cabins for permanent occupation or another type of occupation could be immune after 4 years. So effectively, the requirement there is to require compliance with the condition. So we would serve a notice to require that compliance. Now, I mentioned earlier about the applicant's agent writing to us. So we have received commentary. I don't think they're averse to us taking action, but they've asked us to negotiate an acceptable time to allow the person residing there to leave the premises. So we would normally discuss that before issuing. So in this instance, it's likely to be a 6-month period of that sort of nature, just to allow the tenant to leave the premises. So that's the log cabin aspect. Motocross activities. So these were undertaken on a track that was created in a field adjacent to the A48 access. So the main access off the A48 is around here, and the field alongside that access had been effectively used for motocross, and some ramps had been put in on the land. So the landowner advised us that the activity could be undertaken up to 14 days a year. So that's what we obviously monitored that, and we did receive complaints that this had been exceeded. So as I mentioned, the soil ramps had been put in and constructed on the land. In terms of going forward, we continued to receive complaints at various times in relation to that. So our requirement was to cease the unauthorized use and remove those ramps from the land. We've had confirmation from the applicant today through his planning agent that the use has ceased and the ramps have been removed, but we'll obviously have to look at that on site and consider it further. But effectively, that shouldn't stop us seeking authority to take action, and obviously we'd only issue a notice if we feel that use recommences or the ramps are reinstated. So that's that one. Fourth item then, in October 2022, we approved an application for an agricultural building. So that was going to be used for sheep, accommodation of sheep. The building that was constructed on site isn't the same dimensions and has been constructed with a cavity wall and divided into two separate units. So you can see the approved plans for the scheme and the scale of the building here alongside one of the existing barns. And then the scale of the building erected down here. You can see the appearance of it. So the landowners advised that he would regularize the position, but we haven't received an application, and there would be no justification for a commercial building in this location. So on that basis, we'd be seeking authority to enforce against the building. So that would require removal of the building and the car park. Again, I mentioned that letter that the owners submitted this morning relating to this, and that confirms an intention to remedy the breach through an application, and that they will be using the building for agricultural purposes. So we'll have to monitor that situation, but effectively we're seeking authority to take action. If an application is subsequently submitted, we will deal with that on its own merits, but at this time there is no application, so we feel that we should at least seek authority to take enforcement action on it. And the final area then, there was some land excavated, so this is now at the north part of the site. So the area we were just talking about was down here, and this is the northern part. The council approved an application for the retention of a stable block there and a use as an equine hospital in April earlier this year. So we identified that an additional area of land's been excavated to the north, and that wasn't included in the application. It's not a significant area, and subject to it being profiled and finished appropriately, it would be acceptable. So we haven't had an application to regularize it to date, but we'd be seeking authority to take action so we can require that profiling and landscaping be carried out. So that's that, Chair. So I've run through the different breaches.
Yeah,
obviously there's areas in the report where we do comment on expediency, so areas where we are not taking action at present, but we will monitor it. So there's areas there in terms of excavation of soils and things like that where we're not actually taking action at this time, but I think this is basically the situation as present, and that might change over time, but obviously we're getting authority to take action and go from there. Thanks. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liam. In that case, I will ask again whether there are any comments, questions, or clarifications that people would like. Councillor Champion.
Yes, all I would like is that makes the officers work with the client about the uses to try to establish what is a suitable use in the countryside. I'm sure they will, and what is not suitable in the countryside. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's the purpose really of the enforcement notice, is to ensure that conversation will go on, and those that are in breach are then removed, and those that aren't can be progressed accordingly. Ian Robinson, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Chair. I just wanted to just make a quick point. Whilst we'll be happy to have the conversation with the landowner and certainly give advice and directed advice on the issues relating to the developments that are being carried out and what needs to be done to rectify those things. Just want to flag that we can't be acting as almost like an advisor to kind of give general advice on what he might be able to do in the countryside, other uses, other alternatives. That's the kind of advice he'd need to get from a planning consultant. So whilst we'll be helpful as far as we can, we just need to be careful where we draw the line in terms of kind of providing that proactive level of advice. Just want to flag that so the committee were clear on what kind of our role will be going forward.
Thank you. That's fine. Councillor Williams, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Yeah, I thank Ian for raising that, because that is a key issue, isn't it? We look at other developments in the local area as well, farms that are expanding, diverse their actual provision in the hope that they can keep on continuing work. So when you look at this, you think, oh, there's similarities to some of them, but I recognise that many of the aspects of the development here have happened without any consideration for the planning policy, and that's the key issue. So the officers are clearly laid out within the enforcement that some of the things can be regularised, and on that basis I think it's reasonable what's been asked. It's important for us to recognise that if we don't put this enforcement through, then we're just basically giving over the planning over to the the actual individuals to do what they will. So I'm supporting this recommendation, and so move.
Thank you, Eddie is moving. And do I have a seconder? Is that a second, Charles? Yes, thank you. And Sandra, you have your hand up seconding as well. In that case, unless I see any comments to the contrary, I'll take that as approval. Thank you.
Chair, before we move on to the next item, I'm going to call Councillor Bruce back in.
Oh, of course.
Bear with me a second. Councillor Bruce. Yeah, we've just finished the item in question, Councillor, so I've just called you back in to rejoin.
Yeah. Welcome, welcome back, Gillian. Right, moving on then to item agenda item 8.2, land and buildings at Hilton Farm, Colwinston. Sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Yes, another enforcement action there on your agenda. So in this instance, we're seeking enforcement action in connection with unauthorised extensions added to a barn, notably a UPVC conservatory and a white porch on what's called the Big Mews barn. So as you say, it's in Colwinston, just in terms of this location here. Just come on to, yeah, so it's approximately 1 mile from Colwinston, in the countryside. So this came about because from a proactive enforcement case where we were looking at checking compliance with a previous application at the site, and it was noted that the barn at this location, so here in this red line area, it previously been allowed to be converted for tourist accommodation, but effectively wasn't being used for tourist accommodation, was being used for other uses in terms of business type uses. I say business uses, I mean in terms of residential uses for longer periods. So it's similar to the last item that we received on the agenda in terms of the length of time of the use being carried out. So you can see from the photos, this large conservatory erected on the barn. There's a white porch, quite stark elements when you look at the sort of character of the barn. And in addition as well, this barn previously had a lower eaves level, so they created a higher eaves, lifted the roof and added a first floor to the property. So that's set out in the report there. In terms of considerations, we looked at the sort of the raising of the ridge of the building, and effectively that was taken longer than 4 years ago. So those works were carried out more than 4 years ago, so would actually be immune from any enforcement action, whereas the porch and the conservatory are within 4 years, and they're visually unacceptable when you look at the context of the barn and how it relates to the original structure. So that was one concern we had. And then in terms of the use, there was unauthorized use for residential let. So the adjoining property, I should have mentioned earlier, Little Mews, is currently occupied as a permanent dwelling. A certificate of lawfulness was approved in October earlier this year. So the neighbouring property has been lived in for a period of more than 4 years, and then we had to grant a certificate of lawfulness. So the Big Mews, which is this subject enforcement issue, has been advertised as holiday let. Despite being advertised for holiday let, it's also let out for like a general rental, so people working in the area. So rather than your traditional tourist accommodation. So if that was unrestricted and left, then again, that could be subject to a certificate of lawfulness in the future, and then that could mean it could be lived in for permanent accommodation. So in terms of our policies, unrestricted residential use, MD11, such uses are only acceptable where the property's been marketed for other alternative uses. So at this stage, we wouldn't have had other marketing information that would suggest that it is acceptable for permanent residential use. So yeah, the key issues in terms of enforcement action are to require removal of the conservatory, removal of the porch, and then require the use of the Big Mews barn as any residential dwelling to cease. So effectively doing what the original permission was for. So just looking at the original approved plans, you can see there dated 2007, so application of 2006. So you can see the form of the barn, which differs now to what was approved. So effectively, we're seeking authority to take action for those matters. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Liam. Any questions, queries, comments? Councillor Cave.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just have a couple of points. I know this area, and actually I can remember when these properties were quite derelict, actually, and they have a really outstanding view across the fields. And like the last matter to come to planning, this is really about protection of the countryside, which is very important. But I'd just like to ask on section 37 of this report on page 98, there are some figures there. There's a little table actually, which sets out social housing need in the Landau ward. It says in Landau, but I think it actually should say the heading for that table should be Landau ward. And I just wondered, could you clarify whether those figures take into account the social housing that's just been agreed in Lisworney, which is only about a mile down the road from this site?
So those figures would have come from our housing team. So I can't confirm either way whether it does or doesn't contain that information. But effectively, the report is basically saying that the development isn't acceptable for permanent residential use. and as an affordable housing contribution would be required in any event. So the report is basically saying that we need to take enforcement action to require that they cease any permanent residential use and to remove the conservatory and the porch. So we're not considering a planning application in this report. We're basically setting out what the contribution would have been worked as.
Yes, I do understand
Yeah.
that, but I'm just asking as a point of clarity, you know, were those figures correct, and had they taken into consideration the application that has just recently passed in Iswerny? Just a point of clarification. I'm happy for you to come back at another stage.
Yeah, we can clarify again what point that was made, because obviously the officer would have sought consultation. See, Ian's got his hand up. I don't know if
Yeah, I was going to just say that, Ian, perhaps you can help us with this.
Thanks. Yeah, that's fine. I don't think I can answer definitively, but my inclination would be that the need figures would probably not take into account the approved dwellings until they're constructed and occupied, because until they're built and people have moved out of need into those, it would be logical to me that those figures would not have taken that into account, but we can double check that for you and come back to you on it.
Thank you. Thanks for that. In that case, the recommendation is to support the enforcement action for the reasons that Liam has stated in detail. I see Eddie's hand up first.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. This is one of those quirks which frustrates planning members. And if something's left for a few years and it falls and we've got no control over it, and if we leave this as a property that's residential, then we've lost a hand. And it's not that we're trying to penalise the people. It's just recognising that there's justifications for why we make these decisions. So on the basis that they haven't complied, and clearly it's not a plan application, so unless they put one in, then we've got to take what we know in front of us now. So therefore I'll move the officer's recommendations.
Thank you. Sandra, is that a second or is it a question?
It's a second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. In that case, unless I see anyone opposing this, then again, I will take that as assent. That's it. That's agreed then. Enforcement action can be taken. Moving on then to planning applications, agenda item 9. The first one on our list today is the Leckwith Quay, Leckwith Road, Leckwith, planning application 2020/0121/8 and Rob Lancashire, I think you're taking us through this.
I certainly am, Chair. Thanks very much. Okay, I know we got a certain way through last time, but just to repeat where we got to and just describe the kind of context of the site. So as the description said just now, the planning application is a hybrid application with full planning permission sought for works to provide a replacement bridge and associated highway realignment with outline consent sought for up to 228 dwellings. The site comprises of an area of circa 8.3 hectares, near to the administrative boundaries of Cardiff to the east and obviously the Vale of Glamorgan to the west. The site largely consists of previously developed land adjacent to the River Ely, as can be seen from the site location plan before you. The south and west of the site comprise of areas of woodland known as Leckwith and Factory Woods, which are locally designated as sites of importance for nature conservation. The site is known locally as Leckwith Yard Works and is accessed off the B4267 Leckwith Road, via the Old Leckwith Bridge, which is a Grade 2 star listed building and Schedule Ancient monument. Part of the site is noted as falling within Flood Zone B and Flood Zone C1, as noted on Natural Resources Wales Development Advice Maps. So just for, I know a lot of members braved the elements this morning and came to see the site in the cold, but just for those who aren't there, we'll just we have some aerial photographs which might assist just for context of the site for those who haven't had the chance to visit, which we did run through briefly last time, but just for clarity, just to do so again. This first site shows the site in the context of a wooded escarpment to the left of the site. The A4232 is the elevated road, to the other side of the river, and the River Ely itself, and also then shows the context in the kind of urban form of Cardiff and the large buildings to the other side of the A4232. You can see you could have seen the New Fitzallen School towards the top of the picture, the Cardiff City Stadium and Leckwith Retail Park. So next one, Liam, sorry. This is a zoomed in image showing the site itself, showing the existing viaduct kind of dissecting centrally through the site, with current industrial uses to either side. The listed bridge is just visible just to the north of the existing viaduct, crossing the River Ely. Next one, please, Liam. This is the view of the viaduct and the site from the south, showing the width of the site and how it is dissected by the elevated road. Also shows how it is framed by the wooded escarpment to the left-hand side and the River Ely and the A4232 to the right-hand side. Next one, please, Liam. Okay, this is another aerial view, so I won't labour too much on these. This is from the Cardiff side with the A4232 in the foreground and the wooded escarpment behind. Okay, and this is again from the northern side, which shows the listed bridge in the foreground and just generally shows the kind of fragmented land uses within the site, with the River Ely to the left. Okay, and that's a close-up view of the existing viaduct with the concrete yard just in front. So this first site photo, which I took before the last meeting, just shows the site from beneath the A4232 up towards the escarpment to the rear, with the viaduct again running centrally through. The listed bridge and the access is shown adjacent there to the right hand side, where adjacent to where the cars are parked, which is currently the form of access for the industrial uses on the site. Next one, please. This is from on the listed bridge itself, which I know members had a chance to look at this morning, showing damage which has occurred to the listed structure recently as a result of heavy vehicles, I assume, knocking the coping stones and more off where that orange Harris fencing is there. Next one, Liam, please. This is from on top of the viaduct northwards to the site, showing the kind of car sale use in the foreground, the escarpment to the left hand side, and the kind of gas storage facility in the foreground. Okay, and then this is from the viaduct again, south towards the kind of what will be referred to as the southern plateau shortly, with the concrete yard and some miscellaneous kind of car storage and what have you to the right hand side there. Next one. This is from the top of the viaduct with Cardiff in the background. Shows the existing geometry of the road and narrow footways to either side, as members would have seen this morning. Again, they're probably less than a metre wide in places with the crash barriers to either side. And then one more photo. This is from further up the B4267 with the escape lane broadly kind of showing where the geometry of the road, revised road, which I'll come on to shortly. Yeah, basically the revised road would broadly follow that escape lane to the left hand side there. Okay, so moving on. So the proposed full application includes details of the realignment of the existing B4267 Leckwith Road link and a new bridge crossing the River Ely to the opposite side of the listed Leckwith Bridge than currently is the case. The existing route runs through the site via viaduct and is recognised as being in a very poor state of repair. The proposals might be worth going to the next plan, Liam, please. The proposals would include the realignment of the road further to the north and west of the existing alignment, predominantly on an embankment, as you can see from the plan before you. This would include access points into prospective residential development within the existing industrial commercial area. You can just see the kind of outline of the existing route of the road there as well, just for context, and the listed bridge kind of sandwiched between there, as Liam is pointing now. The existing road is identified within the current adopted local development plan as forming part of the strategic road highway network, obviously forming an important link between the Vale of Glamorgan and Cardiff itself. The road structure is in a poor state of repair, and this is recognised by the council's highway development section. Indeed, the operational manager for engineering has indicated that the current condition of the structure is such that remedial work would be prohibitively expensive, and replacement is identified as the most cost-effective approach. As such, they are highly supportive of the proposals. In the absence of intervention, it is highly likely that within the near future, the route would need to be closed or further limited in terms of weight, that in either event would likely result in significant disruption of traffic for highway users on this arterial route. In addition to this, the proposals would provide enhanced pedestrian infrastructure and would in turn result in the removal of vehicular traffic from the listed bridge that has already caused significant damage to the protected structure, as shown in the photographs earlier. Replacement of a viaduct with a durable structure built to modern standards would remove a significant liability associated with the existing structures, and is therefore considered to represent a significant benefit for proposals and should be afforded significant weight in the planning balance. Okay, might be worth skipping on to the residential bit next, Liam. Sorry, I should have kind of gone through these couple of bits. So that's the listed bridge, just for context. Which, yes, yeah. So anyway, the next slide, please. There we go. So as noted, the application seeks residential development for up to 228 dwellings on the north, split between the northern and southern plateaus, which are kind of the residential areas kind of highlighted in orange on the plan before you. It would comprise of a mixture of flatted development and dwellings across the two plateaus, accessed from either side of the realigned road, as shown on the previous slides. Members are also advised that the residential development of a site would, in essence, act as facilitating development for provision of a replacement road, and conditions are proposed to ensure appropriate phasing, including the delivery and completion of the road upon which the residential development is dependent upon for access. The indicative master plan and scale parameters, Liam, if you could just skip on to the next one, please, indicate development of varied form with flatted blocks between 4 to 6 stories, predominantly towards the northern end, with the scale of development decreasing towards the southeastern end of circa 3 to 4 stories and 2 to 3 stories. So the highest development is shown, just for context, in dark purple there, as Liam's highlighting now. The indicative layout, which Liam will skip onto now, is considered to demonstrate that the site can accommodate the quantum of development proposed in a suitable layout that would serve the needs of future occupiers, including in terms of amenity space, open space and parking, albeit this would be subject to further consideration at reserved matters stage, noting that currently only access is being applied for. Members are advised that the site largely consists of previously developed land, and therefore it's in general accordance with a number of thrusts of national planning policy. Furthermore, the site is located adjacent to Cardiff, and the number of services and urban features contained therein. However, members are advised that the site for residential development falls outside of any settlement boundary identified within the local development plan, nor is it allocated for such development, and such there would be a degree of tension with relevant policies within the development plan. The officer report, sorry, I've only written one, details how the proposal have been considered in lieu of a number of technical matters, inclusive of noise, flooding, ecological constraints and contaminated land. And following extensive negotiation even and consultation, associated impacts are now considered to be acceptable, as detailed within the report. I'll just go over a few of those briefly. Just before I move on to that, I just want to clarify there was a error within the report at the end of the noise section at the foot of page 158. This wrongly references TAN 15, which is obviously relating to flood risk and management, and a condition relating to the flood consequence assessment. This should have been at the end of the flooding section, and this section should have referred to TAN 11, which is the one relating to noise, and condition 9, which is the condition relating to noise measures which have been identified within the submission, and subject of significant scrutiny by our shared regulatory services. So just to touch on a few of the matters briefly, rather than the report is quite lengthy, so I don't want to go through every single matter, but some of the more technical matters which I know members raised some issue with at the last brief discussion, the last committee. So firstly, flooding. It is recognised the site falls partly within flood zone B and C1. TAN 15 identifies that development within flood zone B is generally suitable for most development. With regard to C1, TAN 15 advises that development can only proceed subject to consideration of consequences and in line with the justification tests. These include that its location is necessary to assist a local authority initiative or contribute towards key employment objectives. It also would need to meet the definition of previously developed land, and the consequences of flooding of the site are fully understood. So in these regards, firstly, the road infrastructure would renew part of the strategically important highway network as identified within policy SP7 of the LDP, and would maintain access to employment opportunities in the wider area and prevent strain on wider infrastructure within the Vale of Glamorgan. The majority of the site, as noted previously, also represents previously developed land, and the site has been subject of significant scrutiny through hydraulic modelling and a flood consequences assessment. And these have obviously been assessed by Natural Resources Wales, drainage, and other undertakers. So these include recommendations to make the site resilient in flooding events, including raising the land in parts by up to 1.3 metres to ensure that the flooding effects on the site are acceptable. So again, following consultation with NRW, they have confirmed they are satisfied with the development of the site in this regard, and it does not represent a reason to refuse planning permission. Briefly, it is recognised that the site does provide a degree of employment use. These historic uses are predominantly centred around things like vehicle sales and recovery, gas storage, and concrete product manufacturing. These are considered to be kind of open storage style uses, and it wouldn't result in the loss of kind of high quality business premises that you might get on some of the other sites. While some activity persists, it's understood that these are generally subject of leases that could be terminated within 28 days. Noting the above and the access constraints afforded by the listed bridge for users of these existing uses, it's considered the employment use of the site is not the most suitable or viable for an ongoing basis. Next, the proposals would result in the loss of a number of trees. This would be circa 380 if on the basis of an assessment of the number of trees within groups not being definitely known, but on a reasonable estimation, which would largely result from the realignment of the road. Although as detailed within the report, the majority of these are of poor health, disease suffering from Dutch elm disease and ash dieback, and or of very poor quality. The draft landscape plan, which is on the screen in front of you, includes the provision of green fingers, which would allow a significant degree of replanting within confines of the site and other areas of planting, including on the woodland fringes. And also on top of that, there's an agreed financial contribution towards replacement planting of circa 200 trees, which is considered suitable mitigation, noting that, again, the majority are as a result of the realignment of the road. Just for members' attention, given the facilitating nature of the development and abnormal costs associated with the development of the site, the application has been supported by a viability assessment that has been verified by a mutually agreed consultant. Again, all those details are available on the planning register and are detailed within the officer report. Owing to this, a reduced amount of planning obligation or planning contribution has been proposed, which would contribute 10% affordable housing, which is kind of circa 23 units, and £300,000 split between education and off-site tree planting. So just to kind of conclude in summary, it's acknowledged through the body of the report there's a degree of tension with certain policies within the development plan, including those relating to the location of the development, given its position outside of the settlement boundary, impact on trees and planning obligations arising from a residential development. However, this must be weighed against significant benefits of the scheme, namely the provision of upgraded transport infrastructure along one of the main arterial connections between Cardiff and the Vale of Glamorgan. As such, subject to suitable mitigation to be secured through conditions and mechanisms within the legal agreement, is officers' view that the proposed provision of the road holds significant weight and the reduced section 106 provision in this instance is considered to be acceptable. As such, when weighed in the planning balance, the proposals are considered to be acceptable. And last point, members are advised that owing to the nature of the development and given it not be in accordance with one or more provision of the development plan, should we be minded to approve the application in line with officer recommendation, then Welsh ministers would be notified prior to the formal grant of permission. And that's me.
Thank you very much for that,
Okay.
Ron. We have a speaker on this before I bring everybody else in. Emma Fortune, I believe, wants to speak on this. So I'll bring her in now. She's speaking for the applicant. Emma, are you there? Oh, I can see you now.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, you know the rules. You have 3 minutes, and our democratic officer will let you know just when you've got a minute left.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me to address Planning Committee today on behalf of my client, Mr. Worthing. My name is Emma Fortune, Planning Director at Carney Sweeney, and I'm the appointed agent for the planning application. As your officers have already presented to you in great detail, the application proposals before you seek to develop the existing low quality underutilised brownfield site at Leckwith Yard for residential development, which will include associated areas of public open space and landscaping. A key element of the proposals also includes the replacement of the B4267 Leckwith New Road Bridge, which, as you have heard and probably seen today, is in a critical state of disrepair. Without its replacement, it's likely that further weight limits on the bridge or its full closure to traffic may be required in the near future, thereby meaning that one of the main arterial routes and part of the strategic highway network linking the Vale of Glamorgan and Cardiff will be severed. The route of the new road bridge is regarded to be the most efficient option available. And of course, by it being proposed as part of this development, it removes the need for its replacement to be funded directly through the public purse and taxpayers' money. The application before you has been under consideration by your authority for just over 3 years, and during this time, the proposals have been subject to great technical scrutiny from not only statutory consultees such as NRW, CADU, GGAT, National Grid and Welsh Water, but also your internal officers and shared regulatory services, all of which are now satisfied that the application proposals are acceptable. Whilst in essence, the development will facilitate the replacement of the road bridge to which significant weight must be afforded, the development proposals have also been carefully designed to offer the following opportunities and placemaking benefits. The proposed development will replace the light industrial and commercial uses currently on site with a sensitive integrated housing scheme led by strong landscape, ecology, biodiversity and drainage strategy principles. Developing this site therefore has no impact on any best and most versatile agricultural land. The development will facilitate a range and choice of housing, including affordable housing. The replacement bridge will help preserve the historic Old Leckwith Bridge, which is Grade 2 listed Schedule Ancient Monument, as all current vehicular movements will be removed from it. The development seeks to protect and enhance the existing built and natural environment, and there'll be a net increase of 31% of new trees being planted on site, plus a contribution to trees being planted off site. The development benefits from and will provide connections to the wider environment and enable sustainable access by walking, cycling, public transport to employment, shopping, education, health and community facilities and open space. On this basis, I therefore urge Planning Committee to support this application this afternoon. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you, Emma. If you just stay online a moment while I ask if there are any points of clarification that the committee might want to raise with you. Again, I see no hands. So in that case, thank you very much, Emma, for your time, and we'll move on. There are a number of people on the call who are local members, but are not members of the committee. Do any of them want to address the committee? Councillor Carroll, you have your hand up.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As the ward member for Landock, I have a number of concerns regarding this development. The committee will be aware that it is situated within the community of Mickleston-le-Pit and Leckwith. However, its location on Leckwith Road means that the development will also have significant impacts on the village of Landock. My concerns relate primarily to the impacts that the development will have on traffic flows through the village of Landock. There are two main entrances to our village, at Leckwith Road to the north and at Penland Road to the south. An additional entrance exists at Landock Hill, but there are notable issues with speeding on this road, as well as problems with the road surface. Put simply, it is not designed to handle large volumes of traffic. It is my strong fear that, if permission is granted for this development, traffic flows on Leckwith Road will be impacted severely. The development, if approved, will see over 200 dwellings constructed, and access will be from Leckwith Road, which will need to cope with the increased volume of traffic that this will bring. This has the potential to cause tailbacks, particularly during peak periods. As Landock residents use this route on a daily basis, they will be affected, and this must be taken into account. In 2019, this committee approved planning permission for a development further up Leckwith Road opposite Vale Car Sales. This development does not fall within Mickleston-le-Pit and Leckwith, and instead falls within the Landock settlement boundary. It has already impacted on traffic on Leckwith Road during the construction phase. It continues to do so, and as we speak, temporary traffic lights are in place due to construction and drainage works in relation to this development. And when it is completed, access issues will continue to impact traffic flows on the road. A further development on Leckwith Road will make matters even worse. From the consultation documents, it is apparent that Mickleston-le-Pit and Leckwith Community Council also raised concerns about traffic as part of their objections, and I too object on these grounds. I note that this is a hybrid application, so in the unfortunate event that planning permission is granted this evening, I request that I am consulted in my capacity as the ward member for Landock on any further applications that may come forward in relation to this development. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. I see no other hands up wishing to speak. Before we move on to general discussion, I would like to ask whether Rob Lancashire has any response to that.
Councillor Hodges got his hand up.
Yeah, Councillor Hodges is part of the committee, and therefore we're not quite at that point yet.
It might be beneficial because I think Mike Clogg's on the call as well, who might be able to kind of provide Councillor Carroll with a bit more clarity on the kind of wider issues. Mike, would you be able to assist?
Councillor Clogg and Councillor Mr. Clogg.
Well, in terms of the additional traffic, the site at Leckwith Quays is obviously located close to a junction with the A4232, I think. So, I think the expectation is that majority of traffic would be heading in that direction and perhaps into the Cardiff direction. So, I don't think we have any figures for traffic movements as such at the moment, but the expectation would be that the majority of traffic would be probably heading towards Cardiff and maybe to the main roads in that direction.
Yeah. Thanks for that, Mike. In that case, we'll move on to the debate generally. Nick, Councillor Hodges, you've had your hand up for some time. Thanks for your patience.
That's okay. Thank you, Chairman. Good debate. And can I first start by saying thank you for the site visit. I did find it very useful. It was cold, but to actually see the site from ground level and well, from above as well, but I found it very useful. It's a large scheme on our border, and I'm glad that I had a number of explanations about the scheme actually on site. I found that very useful. I am satisfied with the explanation of raising the site and the reduced risk of potential flooding. I certainly do welcome the replacement of the main bridge, but I do wish that we had gone as a council for Cardiff Capital Region funding, and because it is of inter-county importance. But there we go. We could perhaps have asked in the scheme for more affordable housing instead. But there we go. That's the situation we're in. The loss of trees is certainly less concerning to me than it was, because they are not of high quality. I think that was well shown, and I accept that. And I look forward to the new replacement planting that will occur as part of the scheme. One thing that did come up, I think, as a result of the site visit was the plaque on the bridge. It's a small thing, but it's nice. The reciting of that, perhaps a 1935 plaque, as a feature, as a main part of the perhaps 1% for Art scheme somewhere on site, I think would be quite nice. And we want to pick that up really as part of the site visit. I've got no access, no problem for, hang on, message coming in, remove. I've got no issue with access to shopping and services by foot. It will be unfortunately shopping in Cardiff effectively, but there we go. We did it today from the bus. It's not an issue. I'm now largely happy with the scheme and the repair of the old footbridge as it exists. I would only ask that it was mentioned that it would just be for foot and bikes, so I'd like to see perhaps 2 bollards, one either side near the entrance to each one, just to make that more obvious perhaps to people. All I would ask is that our eyes are kept on this scheme as it proceeds, because it will be highly visible. It is on one of our county borders, but on the whole, I think I've now been placated and I'm happy with the scheme. And in fact, I'll happily move it, Chairman.
Thank you,
So
Councillor
thank you very
Hodges.
much.
Yeah. Moving on then to Councillor Ernest. Actually, before we do that, do I have a second for Councillor Hodges' motion?
I'm happy to second that, but I'm also
Thank
happy
you.
to speak as well.
Yeah, I'll call you in later on. Councillor Ernest.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm afraid I'm the member who's going to oppose the scheme as it stands. We've heard glowingly tonight of the benefits that the scheme will bring to the area. It'll remove a brownfield site. It'll provide new housing, only 10% of which is affordable, compared with the 50%, for example, that is the Welsh Government are calling for at another site near where I represent. The cost of the new road is being put forward as a major reason for accepting the scheme. In my view, the funds for principal A-class roads should come from Welsh Government. It shouldn't be subsidised by costs coming from the developer of the site. We're losing trees, and these trees are actually on Vale-owned land. We own those woodlands right down to the road, unless I'm corrected on that. And there's been no reference to that at all, that the Vale is willingly giving up tree cover on land that we owned, which is recreational land that should be available to all people living in the Vale, and indeed those from outside if they wish to come. There's been no reference to schools for the children who will live there. Do they go to Fitzallen? No, that's a Cardiff school. And under our and our schools admission policy, we wouldn't be sending children to a school 200 yards down the road. We'd be sending them back to Landock or to Dinas Powys, both schools which I understand are, if not at capacity, very near capacity. I mentioned the 10% on affordable housing, and yet this council has been striving to get 30%, 40%, 50% affordable housing, but is happy to throw that principle out of the window on the basis of a brand new road, which may or may not come on the development. And lastly, Chairman, I think it's the location. It's such an inappropriate location. A former brownfield site looking towards factory units, a football ground. What sort of outlook is that for the new residents of the Vale of Glamorgan? Our residents, who we will be asking to look out at a busy road nearby and look onto a landscape which is pretty desolate. And if they want to walk anywhere or cycle anywhere, they've got to cross 4-lane highways and go underneath a principal A-class road serving Culverhouse Cross down to the docks. Pretty grim, I would have thought, and I'm surprised that any of my colleagues would be in favour of this. So, Chairman, I cheerfully am against the proposal and will be voting as such. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Councillor Champion.
Hello. I also noticed the plaque, so I don't know whether the agent for the applicant is still on, but if she can take note of that. My concern possibly is car parking. They've said, but they've used some of Cardiff's standards, which I'm not sure because we're in the Vale of Glamorgan. I know highway, you'll come back and say highways have accepted it. And I know it's an outline application, so there's details to be discussed later. But one of the things they also say is that having less car parking spaces will stop people from buying cars. Now, if you've got a job that you need a car for, then not having a parking space doesn't stop you buying the car. It just means you park on the grass. So I'm not sure that is a justifiable reason. So I think highways do need to have a look at those standards that are being proposed there.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Johnson.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with Councillor Hodges. It was very useful to actually have the site visit this morning and to see the location of the Leckwith Quay site in perspective of where it lies alongside Cardiff, because fundamentally, we can look at our LDP and we can look at the map of the Vale of Glamorgan in isolation and say this is a proposed new settlement outside of any settlement boundary and distinct from anywhere else in the Vale. But in reality, it took me 5 minutes this morning to walk from Asda across to the entrance to the site, and this is it's not that many sites that have a large sports stadium, McDonald's, a retail park within 5 to 10 minutes. The new Fitzallen School has been built a couple of 100 metres further on. It's not much further to Ninian Park train station, and you're about a 20-minute walk from the centre of Canton. The reality is that this is a development which doesn't have a great deal of relationship with the wider Vale of Glamorgan. I don't think people living on this site will be rushing to drive through Llandock unless they're visiting the hospital site, which is the reason why you might want to travel, sort of uphill from there. This is fundamentally a part of Cardiff that just happens to be our side of the river. It's a better site in that sense than the one that was agreed at Culverhouse Cross. I think there's a lot of weight put on the flooding assessments, and hopefully those are correct, that this won't be a site plagued by that in future. The main concerns I think I have around it are, although it's being described as fairly, maybe low grade wasn't quite the actual phrase, but not high grade business area. Certainly, I think there are clearly jobs that are located around this site, and it, although they might be on short-term tenancies, that's employment land that is being lost. So that's a disappointment, although I accept that within the wider context of this. The other, and it's the point that's been made previously, is that a major infrastructure project, to me, Councillor Hodges mentioned it and Councillor Ernest mentioned it, although perhaps from slightly different perspectives and angles. Something that links Cardiff and the Vale of Glamorgan in an integral and essential way, such that we see it as a major infrastructure project, should really, in my opinion, be funded from the Cardiff Capital Region, the Corporate Joint Committee, whatever we're calling it these days, as an inter-authority project. We're not doing particularly well out of funding from the Metro, and it seems to me a bit of a missed opportunity to be offsetting our Section 106 in this way, so that there's really fewer affordable houses on this site than we would anticipate, and that money is going towards the building of a new road instead. And that throws up a wider question about the negotiation of Section 106 in general, because when it comes to, by the time it comes to committee, we are usually being told that this is what's on offer, this is what we've negotiated, and it's unclear what input local members or elected members in general have had on those decisions, because this is a decision that's been made. This is what the Section 106 is going to involve, and of course, the work needs to be done. That bridge needs to be replaced. However, it seems to me a disappointment that we're not, that affordable housing is our council priority, except when it isn't. And there's often infrastructure, whether it's schools or in this case a bridge, where we're told that's more important than affordable housing, unless the affordable housing comes along, in which case we're told that's the most important thing. So I think as we go up into the RLDP going forward, I do think we need to consider how Section 106 is discussed with local members and councillors in general, to see how that system can be improved, so that when it comes to planning committee, we don't feel that we've been slightly railroaded into something. Thank you very much. Thank you,
Councillor Johnson. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thank you so far for the comments. I think, I'm a great believer in this application for several reasons, and I'll tell you why. So first of all, it reduces the pressure on developing more greenfield sites within the area. And I think that's one element where perhaps this application is really good. Second thing, I did have the opportunity to visit the site on Monday myself, and I saw for myself, that it's very much a brownfield site. It's not the most accessible sort of sites at the moment because of the bridge that they use. The fact that the bridge is going to be replaced by a footpath bridge, and to restore partly the bridge as it's there, because as you can see, there are damage done to that bridge. That will largely be restored. And it's also near footpaths, which, I urge local members, Penarth members. I have done it myself. I have walked from that site all the way to the site near Leckwith, and further on, all the way right down across, all the way to almost Penarth Road, top end of Penarth Road. It's a very good site to walk on, Ballywiver Ely. And also you can walk the other way, all the way to Culverhouse Cross if you want to, on a footpath. And perhaps more and more people should use that as a good place for recreation. So yeah, it's a very accessible site, and as Councillor Johnson rightly said, it's only 10 minutes away from major attractions such as Cardiff City Football Club, for example, depending upon which team you support, of course. But it is an important aspect in the sense that it is very near of a quite busy area of Cardiff, yet gives the impression of being quite in the rural area. So people live there and would always have the best of both worlds. I mean, I don't see why people necessarily would have to use a car to live on that site, given the fact that, you're very near you know, a centre of lots of attractions. You're very near bus stops as well, not far away. You're not even far away from Chapter Arts Centre and Canton, to be quite honest. 15-20 minute walk will easily get you there. So, you know, in that way, so I think it's quite a sustainable site. Also, I also believe that we should also be looking, you know, for these kind of Winfield site. It's a Winfield site. Yes, it will help in terms of replacing a bridge, and I think the existing bridge has got like architectural merits given the fact it was built almost 100 years ago, and I think it might be good to take some pictures of it and to look, you know, because the design underneath it is very much a hidden gem in many ways, but it needs replacing. If you just go down, you can see, and some of you probably did today, see the areas of decay on that bridge. It's not going to last much longer. If we don't replace it, as you rightly said, we may have to put restrictions on that bridge. You know, that will cause even more traffic chaos, as Councillor Carroll said. You know, he's worried about traffic movements. That you ain't seen nothing yet, as Al Johnson would have said years and years ago, if we don't do anything about it fairly soon. And the thing is, one of the things that many planning members always moan about is what comes first. And in this case, the infrastructure comes first before the actual housing development, and that's got to be welcomed. So for those reasons, you know, I am happy to second this application.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Payne.
Yeah, I very much approve of this site. I've been driving that way twice a day for the past 3 months, including driving through the very well managed site in Landock, where the traffic system is. So that is a very well managed site. So it kind of was looking a bit shoddy as you're going down towards the bridge. So I welcome the development of this area also. I think it will improve the area and it will provide us with very, very much needed housing. So I kind of approve too.
Thank you, Councillor Payne. Councillor Cowp.
Yeah, most of what I was going to say has actually been said. The site visit was extremely useful this morning. I do think it's a shame that we've had to give way to have the bridge. We need the bridge on the percentage of social housing. I think that's a shame, but we are where we are. The trees that are going are generally very poor quality anyway. I just wanted to just clarify that on site this morning, I think it was said, if I understand it right, that the sequence of events is that the road access to the site will be completed before any major building works start on the site. I think that's what I understood this morning. So if you could just clarify that, because I think obviously that road's very, very busy. So if the new road was finished, I think there might be some clearance of the site, but other than that, that the road would be built before major building work starts. Can I just check that? And thanks for arranging the visit. Thank you.
I'll ask Rob to respond after Councillor Buckley.
Okay.
I think is the last hand up, so I'll
Okay,
ask
thank you.
Councillor Buckley to come in now, and then ask Rob to respond to all the comments.
Thank you, Chair. And like all the other councillors have said, thank you for the visit this morning. It was great. I was just going to explain to Councillor Ernest that when we did the visit this morning, where he's saying that the people in those houses will be looking at the back of industrial units and they'll have the noise from the road. Well, the trees either side of the river you can't see the units. You're looking on the green. And it was surprising you couldn't hear the traffic from the Ely Link Road, the A472. And as to losing the trees, what the lady, I think it was Emma Fortune, said is they're going to be planting, if the trees they take out, they're planting 31% more than they take out when they redo the site. So I was just trying to clarify that for Councillor Ernest.
Thank you, Councillor Buckley. Rob, would you like to now respond to the comments that we've had?
I mean, I'm kind of satisfied a lot of the points are covered in my officer report. So I don't want to dwell too much on those, including those relating to education. Just in terms of Councillor Cowp's query about the thing, we have suggested kind of a robust phasing plan, basically to be submitted before anything happens. And that would include kind of the phasing of the delivery of the road infrastructure and connection with Cardiff, and in essence, and with a view to making sure that the road is provided before any kind of significant development works are undertaken on the remainder of the site, and bearing in mind that the access to the residential element of the site is very much dependent on the provision of the road, because the access is off the revised embankment, and we would also want to prohibit any significant construction traffic crossing the listed bridge, as it's already been recognised that significant levels of damage have occurred from the existing use. So really, we wouldn't want any form of heavy plant or machinery associated with construction crossing that. So in short, it's very much the intention that the road will be delivered prior to any significant construction works, or particularly any occupation of any units on either parts of the site.
Thank you very much for that. Mike Clogg, I see you're on screen. Did you want to comment?
I don't think there's much to comment on, Chair. I think Rob has dealt with the situation over the phasing. In terms of the bridge, it is over 90 years old, or around 90 years old, coming towards the end of its useful life. We've been managing it for the last 10 years, knowing that it's deteriorating and it's beyond reasonable repair. We are investigating. Obviously, the development here does provide one avenue for obtaining a new road, a new bridge to replace the existing, but we continue to explore and investigate possible avenues for funding to replace the structure in the future, should this application not proceed. This is a good opportunity, and certainly a significant benefit to the council if we can obtain the new road and bridge through this process. But we, as I say, we continue to investigate other opportunities should the need arise.
Can I just clarify as well? Councillor Ernest referred to this road as being the road over the viaduct as being an A road. Is that correct?
It's a B4267.
Yeah, it's a B class road. Yeah, I just wanted to pick up on that, because I believe I thought that may be incorrect. In that case, we have had a discussion. Some people have indicated that they oppose this application. Others have indicated that they approve, but I think it's necessary to go to a vote, if possible. Can you take us through that, please, Mark?
Yeah, I will now, Chair. I'll just go through the list of names of members, and then they can indicate if they're for, against, or abstain. There will be
for or against officers' recommendations.
Yes, sorry.
Yeah,
of course. Yeah, sorry, Chair. Thanks for clarification. Bear with me a second. Right, I'll start the vote now, Chair. So I'll go to.
Chair, is this the vote for both applications?
What? This is the vote for the officers' recommendations on the hybrid application. Yes.
The hybrid. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll go to the first member, Councillor Bruce.
Against.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Buckley.
For.
Oh, sorry. That was 4, was it, Councillor?
Yeah.
Okay. Councillor Cave.
Against.
Councillor Champion.
For.
Councillor Cow.
Apologies, 4.
Councillor Drake.
For officers' recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ernest.
Against.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Gilligan.
For recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Hodges.
For.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Johnson.
Obliged. 4.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Payne.
For officers' recommendations.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Perks.
For officers' recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Perry.
Aye, difficult one. Against.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Stallard.
Obliged. 4.
Thanks, Councillor. Chair. Councillor Thomas.
4.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Williams.
4.
Thank you, Councillor. And finally, Councillor Wilson.
4.
Thank you, Councillor. Chair, I make that 13 for and 4 against.
I agree. Yep. So that's officers' recommendations are supported. Thank you very much for that discussion. Moving on, we come to 2021/00476/FUL GM2 House, Plymouth Road, Penarth. Again, we had the opportunity of a site visit. I think Steve Butler, you're taking us through this.
Thank you, Chairman. So yes, as the Chairman said, it was subject to a site visit this morning, which I think we all found quite useful to understand the context of the site. So in terms of the site itself, the application site is edged in red on the plan in front of you. There are photograph. It's known as Westbourne House, GM2. So it's located on the western side, at the northern end of Plymouth Road, which is just to south of Penarth Town Centre. So the existing building is used to board children who attend Westbourne School, which is located approximately 120 metres to the north on Stanwell Road. The existing building is an L-shaped building built circa 1990s, originally built and used as an office block with a Dutch gable roof. Elevations are brick and render. More recently, that building has been approved initially at ground floor level, but more recently at first floor level for boarding. So just that aerial photograph in front of you is useful. It shows you've got the Penarth Station railway line to the left-hand side, and then further to the west, the commercial uses, which back onto the railway line. To the north of the site is a parking area, and to the north of that is the job centre, as we saw this morning. All of those parking spaces are connected with the units to the top. And then further to north of that is the railway public house. To the east, on the other side of Plymouth Road, you've got that white rendered terrace, 3-storey 1970s block of dwellings. And to the south, you've got Court Jubilee, which you can just see the roof of. Those are retirement flats. So in terms of the site, it falls outside of the conservation area. So this site, Court Jubilee to the south, and the building immediately to the north are all taken outside of the conservation area, obviously because these buildings don't represent the historic character of Penarth. And I believe this site historically was used for sidings and associated with the railway, so hence a somewhat piecemeal layout and a sort of irregular shape of the site. So, so the proposal itself is to build a 2-storey extension and associated works to the existing building, and this will provide 22 additional rooms with 28 spaces. The extensions will, if Liam can just drop down to the floor plans. So the extension is L-shaped, so you can see it on the there's an extension on the southern side which faces the car park. That's a 30-metre long elevation with a maximum depth of 7.5 metres, and then you've got the west-facing elevation, which sides on to the railway line, which is 19 metres in width by depth of 5.5. As you can see, it just increases in width where it comes to the junction around the existing building. The extension will have a generals. If we just go to the elevations, Liam, the extension will have an eaves height of 5 meters and a ridge height of 7 meters. So in terms of the roof form, that's probably the best shot. The extensions will have a series of hip roofs, which to some degree replicate the hip roofs of the existing. In terms of materials and finishes, as part of the way that the scheme has evolved, what's been introduced is quite a rich elevation. So the southern elevation has, as a result of reducing number of windows, only has really two pairs of windows at each level. So to provide interest and richness, we've got their inset brick panels. There's projecting brick elements. There's also use of contrasting brick and the setback panel. So what that has done is help break up what is quite, well, it's a 30-meter wide elevation, so it's obviously quite an extensive elevation. And that kind of same philosophy, if we can look at the other CGIs, is replicated on the other elevations. And the roof material is like a contemporary, like standing seam type material. So again, that's the elevation you would see when you're stood to the north with the railway line to your right-hand side, and that little kind of V created, that sort of tapered space, that's where the entrance into the building will be. And just to touch in terms of parking, as we saw this morning, there's some kind of informal use of the existing sort of courtyard area to the front of the building, where I think there are about three cars this morning. So some of that will be lost, but they'll still retain a small courtyard area. Then the area to the north, where currently was parking, has actually been since enclosed and used for outdoor space, but none of the parking that is shown, if you go back to the aerial photograph, to the north, that's outside the sighted red. So the sighted red is relatively tight. It pretty much relates to the building itself and its immediate kind of landscape boundaries. So hopefully, I say it's an irregular site. So really the two main issues, say the application's been in for quite some time, since 2021. The two really main issues that we were running with, one was the impact of the development. So if Liam I think we've got some previous design iteration drawings. So on the top left, as originally submitted, they were proposing a 3-story building with a rooftop garden. Officers were concerned about that, particularly in the respect of the fact that even though Court Jubilee's 3 stories, the building which is being attached to wasn't. So to rectify that, and particularly the flat roof design as well, they looked to put a pitch roof on it, but again we felt that wasn't appropriate. So the picture that the CGI on your right was a more recent iteration where they proposed 2-story in element, but they still wanted a 3rd floor element near the railway line. We said no, that's still not acceptable. So what we've got now, just shown in the CGIs, is a fully 2-story that wraps around the building, mostly on the southern elevation, but on the western elevation. So most of the views are, the views from the public viewpoints are relatively limited to mainly from Plymouth Road. Although when you go up Plymouth Road, you kind of drive around over the Stanwell Road Bridge, you can glimpse it. And equally from Station Approach to the west, the building would be visible as well. And the other, if we could just go back to the plan that showed the distances between the site. So there was quite a lot of concern initially and a lot of letters of objection from the residents of the flats in respect of overlooking and the overbearing impact of the development. So the inspector of overbearing, a third of the impact has been reduced by taking one of the floors off, albeit with a hip roof going back on. But there were a number of windows that were sited along that southern elevation, which would have looked over the flats at front onto Court Jubilee. We went through a number of sort of approaches to try and resolve that concern with the idea of skilled glazed windows, but we as officers, we didn't like the idea of the boarding rooms just having non-opening of skilled glazed windows. We thought that was a really poor standard of design. So what's happened now is with the reconfiguration, the sensitive southern part is now kind of the service corridor, where the 2 pairs of windows at each floor level that will serve those corridors, they are not considered as habitable. So all the habitable rooms are either facing northwards onto its own development or on the western side facing onto the railway line, and pretty much the floor plan at ground floor and first floor are pretty much duplicated. So say the distances that we've measured there, so obviously officers feel that the overlooking's been resolved. In terms of the overbearing impacts, we feel that at 16, 17, 18/19 meters, the distances, particularly with regards to reducing the height of the building, together with providing that kind of breaking up of that elevation. As you can see, the elevation is angled, and there's also within that you've got the setback brick elements, together with there's a recommended planning condition for additional landscaping, which, if members can remember this morning, Court Jubilee have their own landscaping on their side of the fence anyway, so there'll be kind of a double layer of landscaping. So say following all that, the officer's recommendation is that the scheme is acceptable. Again, in terms of impact on the conservation area, the site lies outside the conservation area, but is visible from it. But we feel that it doesn't have any greater impact than those existing buildings which border and to some degree already impact on the conservation area. So say officer's recommendation is to approve it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for that. We have a speaker on this, Liam Griffiths, who is I believe the agent. You, Liam, have the normal 3 minutes, and you'll get the minute warning from Democratic Services.
Cool. Thank you, Chair, and members of the Planning Committee for the opportunity to present today. Firstly, I'd like to thank the officer for a good presentation and for addressing the main planning considerations within his report. As you'll be aware, the application has been recommended for approval. The extension has been sympathetically designed to the nearby Court Jubilee, with no habitable windows in the southern elevation. The only windows in the southern elevation adjoin a hallway and therefore present no concerns with regards to overlooking. All bedrooms have windows looking north, east or west and do not cause overlooking concern. The extension varies between 16 and 19 metres away from the northern elevation of Court Jubilee. This relationship is considered to be acceptable and presents no issues in terms of being overbearing, visual impact or impact to light. The outlook from Court Jubilee remains similar to the existing situation. Penarth Town Council commented saying the application should be approved subject to the case officer being satisfied with the level of overlooking towards the neighbouring properties, which officers are satisfied with. The proposals will result in the loss of 4 informal car parking spaces, and this is not a significant concern given the site's extremely sustainable location within the centre of Penarth. Highways officers have raised no objections to the application, and subject to the allocation of time slots for students on pick-up and drop-off days. The applicant has confirmed over 80% of the students are international, and as a result are coming from an airport via a dedicated shuttle service which the school provides. There are transfer days at the start and end of each holiday when students are transported in groups, and as a result the drop-off and pick-up is well managed by the school. The existing building is not listed and the site does not adjoin any listed buildings. The site is located outside of Penarth Conservation Area, albeit adjacent. The officer has comprehensively discussed the design evolution and finds that the development will not unacceptably impact and will preserve the setting and character of the adjacent conservation area. As set out in the committee report, there are no objections from internal consultees to the local planning authority, including highways, the town council, environmental health, ecology, alongside external technical consultees. The applicant has worked very closely with your officers to arrive at a design solution for the site, which addresses both planning and conservation concerns. Members are therefore respectfully requested to approve the application in line with the officer's recommendation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Liam. If you just stay on and see if there's any points of clarification from any of the members of the committee.
Yep.
I see no hands. I assume there aren't. Thank you then for your time, and we can move on to the discussion. And Councillor Ernest, you're the local member. You can come first.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I find myself in a difficult situation on this. As you know, I attended the site visit this morning and we looked at the constraints of the site, the impact or otherwise that the new building or the extended building will have on the residents of Jubilee Court. And of course, I come from that aspect foremost. As existing residents, they will wish to ensure that their quality of life is not detracted from any more or indeed any less as a result of the development. I think there will be additional noise and disturbance. It won't be from parking, it'll be from movement and students come and go. But I think that is part of the price that you pay for having such a building on site. There will be minimal amenity space on the application site. It's a few square meters once you've lost the cars, and that's regrettable. It's been pointed out by the applicants that they have the school multi-user games facility on their site and the children go elsewhere for games as well. So I think that is beneficial. But I also have to consider, Chairman, the effect that this is a business. Westbourne School is a business, a commercially run business. It brings international students into the town, and presumably that brings money into the Vale of Glamorgan in some shape or form, whether it's through business rates or secondary spend by the students in local shops. So I find myself in a situation where I feel I can't vote against it, but on the other hand, neither can I vote for it. So I think in the circumstances, I will be not voting this evening, taking a neutral position, but recognising the arguments, if you like, on both sides of the coin, but particularly for the residents. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ernest. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. First of all, I'd like to move that we support this application, and I'll give you the reasons for it. Firstly, I consider, being at the site this morning, admittedly, we've got already accommodation on this site. Admittedly, this will be slightly larger than what it is at the moment. But equally, though, you've got to understand that this is a site which is very near public transport. In fact, it overlooks Penarth Station. The students, my understanding, will not be driving, although there will be one or two people on site that will have obviously cars, but there is some car parking provided for the site. So I consider A to be a highly sustainable site. B, we reduce the impact of the site by getting rid of one of the floors that was on the original application. And that mitigates some of the concerns of overbearing in terms of the residents nearby. The concern we did have, which was we did have a resident did speak at the site, although not supposed to, was basically concerns of traffic during the construction of the site. And I believe that is well mitigated by the conditions that are on the plan application. And it's important that obviously those conditions are strictly adhered to. I'm aware that the residents of Court Jubilee, they're mostly retired people. They were like bit of peace and contemplation. I fully understand that. And obviously during the construction of any site, there's always a bit of noise and a bit of pollution emanating from any site, and that needs to be significantly mitigated. But I agree on Councillor Ernest's point about, Westbourne School is a valuable asset to Penarth. It is a very eminent school of long standing within the community, and we obviously, treasure that. And I think that's an important point to consider. And yes, for investment from international students is a good thing for any community, especially when we're having a time of a cost of living crisis. So I fully support this and I'm happy to move it. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Champion. Oh, have I got a second for that first before I move on?
Happy to second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Perks. Councillor Champion, you want to speak?
A couple of things. I don't know, I didn't see in the papers. Obviously, the school have a nursery, prep school, senior school, sixth form. Do we know the age group that are most likely to be boarding here? I didn't see that in the documents, but question. I don't know if we know that or whether the agent knows that. The other thing is, yeah, the elevation is interesting, but they say they're projecting bricks. I don't know if that is the case or not. And on day one, they'll probably look like that. But 5 years down the line, when the weather's got at them, they'll look very different. So I think the client needs to be very careful about the detailing of anything that they do. And I know that's not necessarily, well, it is a planning matter because it's the view of the whole elevation. Okay.
Thank you very much. I see no other hands, no other comments. The only person who's indicated that they are not supporting is Councillor Ernest, who would intend to abstain. So unless I see any comments quickly to oppose, then I'm take it that Councillor Wilson's motion to approve is supported.
Second.
Yeah, Councillor Cope.
I put my hand up to support it. Yes, sorry.
All right, yeah. In that's fine. No, I thought you were putting your hand up to oppose. In that case, there being nobody indicating opposition, that Councillor officer's recommendations are approved. Thank you for that. Moving on, we have application 2023/00337/FUL 7 Sycamore Close Llandoch, Penarth. We have late reps on this, which I mentioned earlier, and we have 2 speakers, 1 against, 1 for. But I think, Steve, you're introducing this as well.
That's correct, Chairman. Yes, just on the matters rising note, we've had a further letter of objection from the occupier of 8 Oakwood Close in Llandoch. So, as you can see, the application relates to 7 Sycamore Close. It's a 2-storey 1970s detached dwelling. The dwelling has been previously extended and has been rendered. So just in terms of the site, just to the north of the application site, you can see a little block. Those are a block of 3-storey dwellings, and to the south, the dwellings are quite similar to the application dwelling, or part of the same design in the close. So it's slightly complicated. So the application is partly retrospective for full planning permission for the construction of a 2-storey extension to the rear of the dwelling. So we'll just talk about the actual proposal first. So the extension, which is being sought, is 8.5 metres in width and 3.8 metres in depth. And in terms of the elevation drawings, the hip roof would have an eaves height to match that of the existing dwelling, about 4.9 metres, and the ridge height will be of the hip will be set slightly below the main dwelling at 6.8 metres. The extension to the left-hand side, as you see it from the rear, has been partly constructed with a curved wall at the ground floor to avoid a manhole. And to the rear, you can see bifolding doors at ground floor level and 3 windows at first floor levels, 2 serving a bathroom, 2 bedrooms and a bathroom. To the side elevation on the ground floor, 2 additional windows have been installed. One serving the existing kitchen, and there's one serving the kind of kitchen dining area to the left-hand side. External materials and finishes will be render to both the ground and first floor, and the proposal seeks to use the same tiles as the existing. So if we can just drop down to the photos, Liam. So just as a bit of background to this one, we had previously granted planning permission for a 2-storey flat roof extension several years ago. So as approved, the extension had a flat roof shown on the approved plans to match that of the eaves height. So following the construction of this on site, it transpired through our enforcement team that this had been built higher than was shown. But what it also transpires is that the existing house was shown incorrectly on the approved plans. So therefore, what's happened is the builder or architect have built something higher in relation to the approved dimension height of the eaves, but not only that, they've gone higher as well. So initially, this application, as originally submitted, was to retain this development as built. But as members can see in front of you, we had significant concerns on the visual, particularly the visual impact of this extension. So what we're looking at really is sort of 4 levels of blockwork above the eaves and the additional impact of that. So what members are seeing, that you're currently seeing a non-complete version here, so it will be rendered. But so the proposal now is to bring that eaves height down, which will be really effectively underneath those just at the top of the first floor windows on the left hand side, as you can see, and then the hip roof will then hip that way and obviously be hipped back towards the main part of the house. So we have received quite a number of objections. I mean, initially those objections came in as a result of the unauthorized works, but in terms of the depth and the width, what's been built on site is what has been the approved dimension. So the only difference is the height. So that's what this application is considering, is the increase in the height. So we've got sort of four levels of blockwork, and I believe it's circa about 1 metre. So the eaves height will then run through from where the existing height would have been, and then it'll be hipped back, and the whole house will be, not only the extension but the rest of the house will be rendered. I think the front's already rendered, but the remainder of the side elevation will be rendered, so everything will be tied in together. So just finally on that point, we believe that the planning permission that exists, because the planning permission never technically falls, it just remains in place. We feel that cannot be implemented because it showed an existing house that doesn't actually exist. So you can't build something against something that doesn't exist. So if members were to approve this application, there's nothing actually compelling the owner to implement the new planning permission. So what we have to do, part of this recommendation is to take enforcement action. So let me just find the relevant, just give me a second, page on the report. Sorry, right. So it's page 240, 245 of the report. So as you said, we have been in initial discussions with the applicant, and they've kind of agreed to start works within, I think it was 6 months. But obviously, from our point of view, we think that work has been started anyway. So what we need to make sure is that works are started in a timely manner. So what the report says is officers will be monitoring the situation to see whether works start on site within 2 months, in order then that we be satisfied that the works within the 6 months timeframe will be met. If they're not, what we're asking is that members agree enforcement action at this point, so that if meaningful start is not made on site, then the enforcement team can then serve a notice to order those works to be completed. I mean, bearing in mind, we are just talking about building a new roof. We're not talking about the whole extension. So we think certainly the time frame of 6 months is more than reasonable, and within that those works start within 2 months, really, of the date of if you were to grant permission today. So so there's 2 recommendations really. One is to approve this planning permission, and the other then is to authorize enforcement action. So the 2 options for enforcement is either to remove the development or to complete development in accordance with this planning permission if it's approved. So I think that probably concludes the officer's report. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Stephen. While you're speaking, though, a message came up for me from Mark, and I can't find what it said. Could you, Mark?
Yeah, sorry, Chair. All it was Once the objector has spoken, we need to invite any non-committee members to speak, i.e. the local ward member, and then the person after that for the application. That was all, just to clarify.
Yeah, as I did with the first application. Right, in that case, we have an objector to this particular application. If I can find my papers now.
It's Mr. Allen.
Mr. Allen,
Keith
yes.
Allen.
Sorry, Mr. Allen. I'd put my papers aside for something else. If you can come on screen. Right, Mr. Allen, normal procedure, you have 3 minutes to present to us, and you'll be warned with a minute to go by our democratic officer. Time starts when you start.
Thank you very much, Chair. I represent 9 households in this area, not just myself. And what we are concerned about are 2 aspects of the proposed retrospective planning, which is, first of all, the overshadowing, which I challenge what has been said about it. The planning officer on page 237 said, and he admitted it, the results of this extension is a sizable scale and massing. That's his words, not mine. Therefore, the overshadowing will be quite significant. I've done a bit of computer modelling, and it increases the overshadowing by 30% on what we've got already. Yes, it depends on all sorts of factors, and I've put those in my details, which I sent to you previously. So therefore, I'm looking at how we can reduce even that 30%. Yes, it is seasonal dependent, but besides all of that, we need to reduce the apex height of the extension, the hipped roof apex height, to something more reasonable. 6.8 meters seems rather large to me, and obviously we would be asking for the council to recommend a restriction to the height of that hipped roof. Plus, of course, and I have looked at a lot of the policies you've got, and I've listed them in my letter, and one of the policies about biodiversity, and I actually consulted with a horticulturist of 50 years experience and showed him what we've got. And this actually, he said that it would be difficult to get plants to survive over the winter if you have something of that nature and that particular overshadowing. So in the state of compromise, which is what we're about here, we're asking for the hipped roof to be actually reduced in height. The other thing is privacy, and by the photograph you've got there, and the officer stated, due to the existing boundary treatment, there isn't a problem with the detrimental impact upon privacy. So in other words, if it wasn't for the treatment of that particular boundary, then there would be. Therefore, that kitchen window needs to be either frosted, if it's for light reasons, and I can't understand that because they've got bifold doors, and or it's removed because it's a north-facing wall. That is not good planning and design.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. If you just stay on screen for any points of clarification, and maybe from members of the committee. Do any members of the committee have a point of clarification? Councillor Champion.
Can you tell me where you live, please?
8 Oakwood Close.
Is that face the other side, looking at the back of the property?
Yes, it is. But I represent the 9 properties that I said we've met.
Yes.
So, no other points of clarification? In that case, thank you. Oh, Councillor Buckley.
Sorry, Chair, and thank you, Mr. Allen. Just one question. If the extension were to be dropped to 4 courses, as indicated by the officer, Stephen Butler, and then the hip done, won't that reduce the shadowing that you're on about anyway?
No, I did the shadowing on the hipped roof increase.
Increased. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Cope.
And you mentioned a north-facing window. I agree with what you're saying about north-facing windows and the amount of light. If that window was to be removed, does that make a difference?
Well, what I'm saying is the north-facing window, which I'm talking about, the kitchen window, which you see the top of there, that is a north-facing window. What was the reason for putting it in so late? Was it for light and other things? But why would you put a window next to a fence? So my thoughts are that is bad design. It should be the other side, which is the south facing. If you want more light and more heating, because remember now, that is a north facing window. That is absolutely north facing. That's not,
Thank you.
that's not the design.
Yeah, responded. Are there any other points of clarification? I see none. In that case, thank you, Mr. Allen, for your time. We move now to local members. I think if what I was just told by Democratic Services, Councillor Carroll, you're the local member here. You have 3 minutes as per.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I have been approached by 3 residents in regard to this application who live on Sycamore Close, which is the street on which the property in question is situated, and also on Oakwood Close, which is the street on which Mr. Allen lives, which is behind the property in question. These residents have expressed several concerns in relation to the application, and these concerns and their reasons for objecting to the application are outlined within the reports, the late representations, and the comments that Mr. Allen just made. I'm conscious that time is against me, so I shan't go through all of those in turn. Given the public interest in the application, the residents do not believe that the application should be determined by officer delegated powers. And as their ward member, they requested that I call in the application for determination by the planning committee. It is on this basis that I've made the call-in request, and I would urge the committee to consider all representations that are made in relation to this application. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carroll. Right, we have one more speaker, and it is the speaker for the application. Mr. Hurley, I believe you're the agent. Are you there?
Chair, thank you very much.
Yep, you have the 3 minutes as per other speakers, and you'll be warned with a minute to go.
Thank you, Chair. As you will be aware, this application, as Mr. Butler has outlined, has been recommended for approval. It proposes a construction and regularisation of this 2-storey extension with the addition of the hip roof that we've heard about. Although, as you've seen, there's some works that have been taken on place through detailed discussions with the planning officers, all efforts have now been made through the submission of this planning application to rectify these works. The officer's positive recommendation confirms acceptability of the planning application. In coming to their recommendation for approval, officers have taken account of the previous planning approval and position that we've heard about for the 2-storey extension. In this respect, the officer's report confirms that due to the reduction of the wall, the number of bricks that Mr. Butler's outlined, and the amended roof form, the proposed extension is now as a whole now considered to be much better balanced and proportioned to the existing house, and would not result in an overly dominant and incongruous addition. The report also confirms that the hip roof as proposed would enhance the visual appearance of the extension and would aid in improving the overall visual impact of the development compared to that actually previously approved. The overall design of the extension is deemed acceptable. In regards to residential and neighbouring amenity, the officer report confirms that proposed extension would not unacceptably impact upon the neighbouring amenity of nearby occupiers in terms of overshadowing the loss of light and loss of outlook. And the report actually provides quite a detailed response to the matters that we've just heard that have been raised by Councillor Carroll and Mr. Allen. Sufficient separation distances, the overall scale of the extension, the proposed tip roof, which tapers or actually tapers away from the northern and southern boundaries of the property, will ensure the neighbouring residential amenity is secured. Furthermore, this scheme would result in the reduction of the wall height, which we've heard about, which will actually reduce any overbearing impact. In terms of the window openings that have been proposed, these have been carefully positioned, and as the photograph does show, boundary treatments are in place, so there is no issue of overlooking into the property to the north. As such, the officer's report confirms the proposed extension as presented represents an acceptable form of development in accordance with relevant national policies, local development plan policies, and the VAIL supplementary planning guidance. We would also like to thank the officers for their time and in preparing a very detailed committee report. Also, members, thank you for your time, and we would respectfully request that the application is approved in line with officers' recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are there any points of clarification that anyone would like to raise with Mr. Hurley? Councillor Bruce.
My hand went up a bit too quickly then. I'd like to make a point, a clarification point with Stephen Butler, if that's possible, please.
No, it's
No,
sorry.
sorry.
At this moment, we're asking for a points of
No,
clarification.
that's what I said. I think I put my hand up too soon.
Yeah, as a response to what Mr. Hurley told us.
Yeah.
In that case, there don't appear to be any points of clarification for you, Mr. Hurley. Thank you for your time. You can go off screen. Thank you very much indeed. Right, moving on. Councillor Wilson, you have your hand up first.
Yeah, I would like to support officers' recommendations, and I think the only thing that I would say on this is that we need to make sure that when this application, if it goes through, is properly controlled and regulated. So we make sure that we watched this application very tightly. And I mean, to be honest, I think if we turned down this application today, I would have thought they would have a very good chance of winning on appeal, and that would be a cost against the council. And I see the extension as being reasonable. I mean, given the fact that obviously, we would take out enforcement if it didn't go through today and whatever, because obviously, this is unacceptable what we've seen today. But obviously, with the mitigation, the reduction in the height, and there's no side windows, I mean, I know people have concerns about light and privacy, and I get all that, but I think, given the fact that, this is, a very interesting extension, and I fully support the application. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. Councillor Payne, you have your hand up.
Yeah, can I second that recommendation, please?
Thank you very much. Councillor Champ, yeah, Helen, do you want to say anything more, or is that?
Yeah, I can. I had a look at the history of it and the two previous ones, and I think there have been amendments made to accommodate what the officer's recommendations are. So I'm happy, as Mark says, if it's tightly controlled, then I don't have any issue with it.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Champion, you have your hand up.
Yeah. A couple of points really. One technical, if talking about reducing the ridge height of the hip at the back, the tiles that are being used will have a minimum pitch that they can be, so you can't reduce it down too far, otherwise the tiles that have been used on the front couldn't be used on the back. That's architects for any planning members not knowing that. The other thing is, I'm not sure whether the bird boxes are best on a chimney, and I'd go to the ecology on that. Maybe that could be a condition. The best location of bird box is perhaps just a condition of that approval.
Thank you. Councillor Buckley.
I'm not sure if Councillor Champion's just answered my question. I was going to say, with the reducing of the extension by the 4 blocks, how low could you reduce that hip? So if it was only halfway to the ridge height of the original building, as I think Mr. Allen put in the papers that he put in, wouldn't that reduce the shadowing, and it still allows the people to have the extension that they've got? But if it's down to not being able to use the tiles, that would answer that question.
Thank you. Councillor Hodges, Councillor Champion, you still have your hand up. That's a legacy hand, I take it. Councillor Hodges.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to speak on this really, but I have to say that what a mess. It's awful. It's awful. And I wonder, really, I appreciate the work the officers have put in trying to regularise this, but is it salvageable? I wonder about the angles of roofs and everything like that. But whoever built this, my God, you know, and thank God for enforcement, and thank God for the Vale Glamorgan getting their finger out on this one. I'm honestly, I'm perturbed by this, and I don't know if it's salvageable, and I really, really want to be persuaded that it is. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Hodges. Councillor Bruce, you did indicate earlier that you had a question for Steve, so if you'd like to ask it, or if you have any other comment. Councillor Bruce, you still with us? Perhaps we'll move on to Councillor Copeland.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to suggest that this is only salvageable with complete cooperation. And I don't think you get complete cooperation with somebody who's just building off plan. Sorry, but that's my view.
That's why we have the enforcement part as part of the officer's recommendations, I think. I'll try Councillor Bruce once again, just to see if she has a question. She's not responding. In that case, Steve.
Yeah,
Liam.
just to come back on a couple of the points about the dropping of the ridge. Yes, it could be reduced a bit more. It's currently quite shallow because of the span at the back. It's relatively shallow, so you could reduce it, and technically you can go as low as you like. What you then have to do is create a flat roof with a flat roof membrane, and then put your tiles on top. So your tiles almost become a kind of aesthetic addition to a roof. But I mean, if, for example, this application came in originally, as the original did in, I think, 2020, and it came in with a hipped roof, you know, that would have been considered acceptable. And generally, that's what we favour as officers, and in our SPGs, we ask for roofs to reflect the roofs of the existing buildings. So, I mean, I agree with Councillor Hodges. This is a highly regrettable situation, and you know, we were going to refuse this application, and they then said, well, the last ditch attempt, can we do this? And we said, okay. And we've got to be, you know, whilst no one supports what has happened on site here, we've got to be pragmatic. And if without this application, if enforcement were to take action themselves, they would be requiring a very similar resolution to the scheme. You know, it would be unreasonable to knock the whole thing down when the change is effectively everything above the first floor window. So that's where the extra harm has taken place. So it's how to resolve that. So, you know, we think we've got to a position now. We feel that we've got the support of the applicants. They've committed to doing this. We've got a commitment in writing, but we need to double it up, and with some real strength with that enforcement authorization being approved.
Right, so we have the officer's recommendations moved and seconded. I'm not sure that I heard anybody actually against the officer's recommendations, but if anyone would like to indicate now. I see no hands opposing officer's recommendation. Councillor Hodges.
Yeah, I'll oppose it, Chairman.
In that case, we'll go to a vote.
Can I, sorry, members, can I just ask? I mean, I'm happy with just the point that Councillor Champion made regarding the bird boxes, which, you know, I think is a fair point. I mean, we'd be happy just to amend the condition to ask the 2 bird boxes to be placed under the eaves at the back.
Yeah,
you could do that as a amended condition 3.
Yeah, yeah.
So if we can note that, we'll get that amended for you.
So with that amendment, then as Councillor Hodges has indicated, he's opposed. We'll need to go to a vote, please, Mark.
Okay, Chair, I'll go through the list of members now. Give me a second. Okay. I'll go to Councillor Bruce first.
I am against.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Beckley.
For recommendations. Get it done.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Cave.
For.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Champion.
For the recommendations.
Thank you. Councillor Cope.
Against.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Drake.
For officers' recommendations.
Okay. Councillor Ernest.
For recommendations.
Councillor Gilligan.
For.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Hodges.
Against.
I believe Councillor Johnson has left the meeting, so I'll move on to Councillor Payne.
For officers' recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Perks.
For officers' recommendations.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Perry.
For officer recommendations.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. Councillor Stallard.
Applied. For.
Thank you, Councillor. Chair.
For.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
For officer's recommendation.
Okay, thanks, Councillor. And finally, Councillor Wilson.
For officers' recommendations.
Okay, Chair, I make that 13-4 with 3 against.
Yeah, that's why I make it 2. So thank you for that. The officer's recommendations on that are approved. Moving on, item 10, items which the chair has decided are urgent. Part 1, I have none, and I have no part 2. You'll be pleased to hear. I believe our next meeting is going to be, is hoped to be through the new system, EasyConf. So I look forward to seeing that in action with the planning committee, and it hopefully will make our voting easier and more straightforward.
Yeah. Sorry, Chair, I've got Councillor Bruce, I believe, has got a hand up.
No, Councillor Bruce, yeah.
Sorry, yes. Can I give my apologies? I was out getting a drink and I didn't hear you call me.
Oh, sorry. In that case, you shouldn't really have voted because you didn't hear the whole debate.
Yeah, well,
No, they missed the vote, Chair.
Oh, she missed the vote as well.
Yeah,
Yeah, in that, yeah, yeah. If you're out, then you can't vote anyway. But I did call you in, Gillian, and ask for your, because you had a query that you wanted to raise, but you didn't respond. So that's
yes, it did.
That's
get
regrettable.
answered.
That's regrettable. It got answered.
Did get answered.
It got
Thank
answered
you.
in the discussion. That's fine. Right. In that case, thank you everybody for your attendance this evening. And as I say, I'll see you via EasyConf or in the chamber next time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Have a good evening.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.